This year marks 10 years since the financial crash of 2008, which started with the demise of the investment bank Bear Stearns. Few people saw the crash coming, but economics correspondent Paul Solman did discuss the possibility with, among others, writer and investor Nassim Taleb. Paul recently caught up with Taleb again to hear his latest concerns for our weekly series, Making Sense.
Back in 2006, when he was a hedge fund owner, economic contrarian Nassim Taleb warned of a coming financial crisis in his then soon-to-be-published book, The Black Swan. As I understand it, your central insight is that people underestimate the likelihood of rare events.
Exactly. And my idea is twofold. Number one, that rare events happen more often, and two, that when they happen, they're far more devastating than we can imagine.
More than a decade later, Taleb believes there's a big con going on right now, and that the Federal Reserve's response to the 2008 crisis is part of it. So what's the point of the new book?
Unless a person owns his or her risk, the system will eventually collapse.
The whole system?
The whole system.
The book is Skin in the Game, which argues that a financial system works only if the people who are running it have a stake in the outcome.
And you should build a society in which people who make decisions, all right, are eventually penalized if something goes wrong.
Taleb's gripe with both big government and big business these days that the decision makers pay no penalty.
It's that rise of the class, a no skin in the game class in decision making. People who intervene in Iraq and thinking, hey, we're going to bring democracy or some abstract concept, the thing falls apart, and they walk away from it. In the financial world, we have the same class. A lot of bankers, for example, has not been reduced by the crisis. And as a matter of fact, they were compensated.
What risk are they posing to us now?
The system is loaded with debt that has benefited these bankers. Okay, the chairman of a certain bank now is making $23 million a year again in bonuses.
That would be Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan Chase, and his 2017 bonus was actually $28 million, $5 million in cash, and $23 million in restricted stock tied to performance. The CEOs of the other mega banks weren't far behind. Bank of America's Brian Moynihan and Citigroup's Michael Corbett each got $21.5 million stock bonuses, and Tim Sloan of scandal-plagued Wells Fargo got $15 million in stock. But the point is, says Taleb, none of them had skin in the game, and they continue to proceed risk-free. But if I'm a manager, CEO of a company, and I have stock options, then I am punished if the stock goes down.
No, not really, because you still have upside. Net you have upside.
I mean, so I'm only going to be
you're not gonna, never
compensated.
Gonna be, exactly.
I'm never going to have money taken away from me.
Exactly. Or the taxpayer only has the downside. The taxpayer will never have the benefit of what's going on, but we pay the price as taxpayer in case something goes wrong. Now,
because we're going to bail them out.
Of course. So we are the people who are owning the risk. If people can make money transferring risk to others and aren't penalized, then you will have, the system will blow up. It's very dangerous. And it's unfair and it's immoral.
But wait a second. Didn't the Federal Reserve, the institution charged with saving the banking system, actually save it by creating new money through so-called quantitative easing?
The Federal Reserve tried to cure debt with debt, transferring debt from one to the other, from the private to the public.
What you mean is that the Federal Reserve has created several $1 trillion.
Yes.
And that's money that eventually the American public, at least in concept, in theory, is going to have to pay back.
Exactly. Those who caused the crisis are rich today.
But didn't the Federal Reserve pour money into the system and keep it going and prevent the very paralysis you were worried about?
No, that was Novocaine.
You told me in 2008, you said we could be back to barter. It could be worse, I could quote you. You said it could be worse than the Great Depression, back to the American Revolution.
Let me tell you, in 2008, what it should have done is immediately try to convert debt into equity, make sure those who caused the crisis were penalized, not regular people. I would like the Federal Reserve to understand that very low interest rates, quantitative easing drove people into higher end assets and stocks. Who benefited from it? People who own a lot of stocks and people who own real estate. We haven't really remedied what caused 2008. There's still a lot of debt in the system.
So how do we protect ourselves?
I'm not telling you what to do. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing.
Yes, what are you? That's what I want to know. What are you doing to protect yourself
Exactly.
against
What
the
I'm
black
doing
swan?
is I have a share of my money in currencies,
Foreign currency, that is.
maybe about 35%. Plus, I have some money that I spend to protect myself from crazy rise in interest rates.
Crazy
It may not
rise in
happen,
interest.
But I don't, I'm just paying that to sleep at night.
And what do you? Where's that?
It's technical. It's like derivatives, okay, to protect myself from, rise.
So if interest rates rise, you would
dramatically, because I don't
you
think
would you would make money on these
exactly
securities that you own.
Exactly, and then the rest is I own stocks, I own some real estate, I own the usual things.
I had one last question. Is the system today more fragile under President Trump? Were you in favor of Donald Trump?
I was not against. Trump came, with very simplistic ideas, but anybody with the same mindset, in other words, I'm not part of that group of people, would have been welcome. And there's some optimism. So let's see. But we have to do things to clean up the system of
Or what's going to happen?
a system laden with debt and with pseudo-expert will collapse eventually. Now, it may be that miraculously, under Trump, we may have a second wind and America may rise again and pay the debt.
You mean huge economic growth?
That's my hope. But nevertheless, I'm skeptic. He got the disease right. Now whether he's going to fix it, I don't know.
And of course, neither does anyone else. For the PBS NewsHour, economics correspondent Paul Salman reporting from New York.